Have you ever found yourself completely overwhelmed by life's little setbacks? Maybe someone made a sharp remark, or you had a plan that didn't work out quite as expected. It's easy to feel like the world is against you when these things happen, isn't it? The truth is, though, that these small frustrations don't have to define your day, or even more importantly, your life. Imagine, just for a moment, walking through life unfazed by these things. No more overthinking every little comment. No more letting a small failure derail your entire mood. What if the secret to having more control over your life, over your emotions, lies not in what happens to you, but how you react to it? You see, this idea of emotional control is something we don't often talk about. Yet it can transform everything. Most of us react to external events almost automatically. Someone criticizes us, and we feel that pang of anger or frustration. Mistake happens at work, and we feel like a failure. A person cuts us off on the road, and before we know it, we're stewing in resentment. These things happen constantly, and it's hard not to feel like they take over your life. But imagine if you could change the way you respond to them. Imagine if you could step back and just breathe, unaffected by the noise. I know it sounds difficult. Believe me, it's something I've struggled with myself. But once I began to train myself to pause before reacting, it became easier. It's all about learning to detach your emotions from the external world. Napoleon Hill, in his wisdom, calls this mastering the nothing bothers me mindset. It's not about pretending you're perfect or that you're immune to hurt. Rather, it's about realizing that you have a choice in how you respond. When life throws its curveballs, and they will, you don't have to let them hit you squarely. You can sidestep them, remain grounded, and keep moving forward. This doesn't mean you won't have bad days, or that you won't feel hurt when someone criticizes you, but is about finding your inner calm. The most unshakable people don't experience fewer problems. They simply have a different approach to handling them. Think about it. How many successful individuals or leaders do you know who seem unruffled, no matter what chaos surrounds them? It's not because they're emotionless, but because they've mastered their emotional reactions. They don't give their power away every time someone or something disturbs their peace. It's fascinating when you start paying attention to the people who truly exude this calm, powerful presence. They don't react impulsively to every slight or criticism. Instead, they move through life as though they know something everyone else doesn't. It's a quiet power that commands respect without them having to say a word. You might not notice it at first, but that's exactly what makes it so magnetic. They move with purpose, they speak with intention, and they carry themselves with unshakable confidence. What's their secret? Well, a big part of it is their ability to remain unaffected by the things that so easily disrupt most people. Imagine, just for a moment, a scenario where someone insults you in public. The natural response for many of us would be anger, retaliation, or self-defense. You might get defensive, argue back, or feel humiliated. But what happens if you simply smile and walk away? In that moment, you rob the other person of their power. They were expecting a reaction from you, and when they don't get it, it leaves them unsettled. On the other hand, you walk away stronger, untouched, and in complete control. That's the kind of silent dominance that Napoleon Hill talks about. It's not about standing up and shouting back, but about walking away with your head held high, unaffected by whatever was thrown at you. Now, think about how this applies to setbacks. Failure, rejection, and disappointment are inevitable in life. Yet, how we respond to those moments separates the resilient from the rest. When things don't go according to plan, many of us can fall into a trap of self-pity or frustration. We lose hours, days, or even weeks brooding over what went wrong. But those who have mastered this mindset see failure differently. They don't internalize it. Instead, They treat failure as data, information that can help them adjust, learn, and move forward. Failure doesn't define them. They observe it, learn from it, and use it as a stepping stone for future success. This shift in perspective and happens overnight. It takes practice. It starts with training your mind daily with small habits that build up over time. One simple way to begin is by pausing before you react to anything. Ask yourself, is this situation truly worth my emotional energy? Does this matter in the grand scheme of my goals? Often, the answer will be no. When you choose to respond with calm instead of reacting impulsively, you create a buffer between external events and your emotional state. You start to build an armor, one that shields you from the trivialities of a trivialities life. Visualization is another powerful tool in this process. Imagine yourself as someone who moves through life untouched by insults or criticisms. Picture yourself standing strong in the face of adversity. No matter how tough the situation, every time you reinforce this image in your mind, it becomes your reality. The more you visualize, the more you begin to embody that strong, resilient version of yourself. And over time, others will start to wonder how you do it. How are you so calm, so composed, even in those difficult situations? The truth is, it's because you've cultivated that inner calm, that unshakable presence through practice. At first, this might seem like an impossible feat, but trust me, the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes, and eventually becomes. You'll notice a profound shift. You'll start to walk through life with a sense of power that comes from within. It's a quiet power, one that doesn't need to prove itself to anyone. You'll find that situations no longer have the same hold over you. People's words, their opinions, or even your own inner doubts won't be able to throw you off balance. This is where true strength lies, not in loud displays of power or dominance, but in the ability to stay grounded, to remain calm in the face of uncertainty. It's in the ability to move through life, not as a passive observer, but as someone who commands their own reality. The more you practice this mindset, the more you'll see that life is not something that happens to you. Instead, you are the one who shapes your experience. You are the one who decides how to respond to the world around you. And when you master this skill, nothing and no one will ever have control over you again. As you've already begun to grasp, emotional detachment doesn't mean becoming numb to your feelings or closing off your heart. It's not about turning off your emotions or pretending they don't exist. Instead, it's about realizing that your emotional responses don't have to be dictated by external circumstances. Once you internalize this idea, you start to see the world and its challenges from a completely different perspective. The power to remain unaffected is like a shield, one that protects your peace and gives you the strength to weather even the toughest storms. When we start looking at life's challenges, whether they're failures, criticisms, or unexpected roadblocks, through the lens of detachment, we begin to realize that they are not personal attacks on us. They are simply parts of the journey. Imagine, for a moment, that you are no longer tethered to the emotional weight of each obstacle. Every disappointment becomes a stepping stone, and every criticism a lesson. You no longer lose sleep over what went wrong. Instead, you gather the lessons, learn from them, and use them to refine your next steps. This mindset gives you a deep sense of freedom because you are no longer a slave to your reactions. Instead, you become the master of your own destiny. Take a moment and think about someone you admire, someone who remains calm and composed in the face of adversity. The reason they're so powerful isn't because they don't experience emotions, but because they've trained themselves to not let those emotions dictate their actions. The people who rise above the noise of the world are those who have mastered the art of controlling their emotions, not through suppression, but through awareness and intention. They understand that emotional reactions, while natural, don't need to control their behavior. And when they fully embrace this, they move through life with a quiet strength that others can't help but respect. In every situation, you have the power to decide how you respond. This is something I've had to work on personally, learning to pause before reacting. Often we're so caught up in the emotional heat of the moment that we forget we have a choice. When someone insults us or challenges us, natural response is to fight back, to defend ourselves, to let the anger and frustration bubble to the surface. But what happens when you don't react in the expected way? What happens when you simply stay calm, smile, and walk away? You immediately disarm the situation. You remove the power from the other person, and in doing so, you gain control over yourself and the moment. You see, the power doesn't lie in the immediate reaction. It lies in the pause. That's where you decide consciously to detach from the emotional triggers and respond with intention. This takes practice, but as you begin to make it a habit, you'll start to notice just how much control you have over your own peace. In fact, this quiet composure begins to attract respect from others. They might not always understand it, but they'll certainly admire it. You'll find that people start to look to you as someone who isn't easily shaken, someone who can be trusted to stay calm no matter what. This principle of emotional detachment is something I've found to be incredibly empowering. When I look at my own experiences, whether it's dealing with an argument, a setback, or even just the daily frustrations of life, I realize how much energy I've wasted reacting emotionally. But when I step back and take a moment to breathe, to think about the situation before responding, I notice how much clearer and more powerful my actions become. It's as though by taking that pause, I am stepping into a space of mastery over my own mind. I am no longer at the mercy of the situation, but I am responding from a place of strength. This doesn't mean that you should never feel upset or hurt. Emotions are a natural part of being human, and we can't and shouldn't shut them off. The key here is understanding that emotions are transient. They come and go, and they don't need to control our actions. You can feel anger, sadness, or frustration without letting those emotions define how you behave. This is where the true power lies, in your ability to choose your response, no matter the situation. This skill doesn't just help you remain composed in the face of stress or criticism. It also helps you stay focused on your long-term goal. One of the greatest challenges most people face is letting external events dictate their internal state. We allow others' opinions, the unpredictability of life, and even our own fears to shape our emotional reality. Is a trap. When you start mastering emotional detachment, you realize that you don't need to give away your peace to anyone or anything. This doesn't mean you stop caring about the important things in life. It means you stop letting the small, insignificant things drain your energy. Take the example of someone facing a major life setback, say a business failure or a major rejection. The typical reaction might be to wallow in disappointment, to feel sorry for oneself, to spiral into self-doubt. But what if, instead of identifying with the failure, you viewed it as just another part of the journey, a piece of data to help you adjust your course? When you look at failure this way, it no longer feels like the end of the world. It becomes an opportunity to grow, to improve, and to keep moving forward. That's the power of detachment, letting go of the need to be emotionally attached to the outcome. You free yourself from the burden of frustration. You can move forward with clarity and resilience, knowing that setbacks are just part of the process. This is the key to lasting success. It's not about avoiding challenges or failures. It's about how you approach them when they come. The strongest individuals understand this principle. When something goes wrong, they don't waste time on anger or regret. Acknowledge the setback, learn from it, and move on. The faster you can detach from your emotional response to setbacks, the faster you can adapt and move forward. You might be wondering, how can I actually practice this level of detachment? The first step is simple. Observe. The next time you face a challenge, a criticism, or even just a minor inconvenience, stop and observe how your emotions begin to rise. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this really worth my energy? More often than not, the answer will be no. By simply choosing not to react, you create a space between the stimulus and your response. That space is where you find your power. Over time, this habit becomes second nature. It's important to understand that emotional detachment doesn't mean you stop caring. In fact, the opposite is true. When you let go of the need to control every outcome, when you stop worrying about how others perceive you, you create space to focus on what really matters. You begin to prioritize your own peace, your own growth, and your own journey. You stop wasting energy on the things that don't serve you, and start channeling that energy into the things that do. Emotional detachment, remember this, you are not numbing yourself, you are mastering your own mind, and in doing so, you're giving yourself the freedom to live your life with intention, without being pulled in every direction by external forces. Once you truly understand this, you'll find that you can face any challenge with a calm, composed demeanor. No matter what life throws at you, you'll know that you have the power to stay centered. This is the foundation of true strength. This is the foundation of true strength. Strength that comes from within. As we move forward on this journey of mastering and mastering, we encounter one of the most powerful tools in the arsenal of someone who is truly in control of their emotions and presence: silence. In a world that is obsessed with noise, endless chatter, constant validation, and the need to be heard, silence stands as a pillar of strength. It's the quiet force that often gets overlooked, but when you learn to harness it, it can shift everything in your favor. Think about it. How often do we feel the need to explain ourselves, to justify our actions, or to defend our decisions? The world is full of people trying to be seen, trying to be heard, and in that pursuit, they often lose their sense of power. The loudest voices in the room are often the weakest, driven by a desire for recognition, approval, or validation. But the truly powerful individuals, the ones who exude the kind of quiet strength we all admire, don't seek validation. They don't feel the need to fill the silence with words. They understand that silence itself is a statement. When you learn to embrace silence, you shift the power dynamic. Silence is not a lack of action. It's a strategic move. It forces others to second-guess themselves, to wonder what you're thinking, to analyze your every word and action. And in that space, you gain control. People begin to wonder how you remain so composed, so unaffected, and in doing so, they start to respect you more, not because you seek it, but because your presence speaks for itself. Now, think about how this plays out in real-life situations. Let's say you're in a heated conversation, might be an argument or a confrontation, and the other person is trying to provoke you, to get a reaction out of you. The natural instinct might be to defend yourself, to argue back, to justify your position. But what happens when you don't react? What happens when you stay calm, maintain your silence, and allow the other person to exhaust themselves? The shift is subtle, but profound. By withholding your reaction, you disarm the situation. You take away their power over you, and in doing so, you gain control not just of the situation, but of your own mind. This is what I've learned in my own journey. When I was younger, I often felt the need to explain myself or to react defensively when confronted. But over time, I realized that reacting in such a way only gave away my power. It was only when I began to practice silence, When I stopped responding impulsively, that I started to notice a shift. Suddenly, I wasn't being pulled into every argument or confrontation. Instead, I found myself moving through life with a sense of calm, with an unspoken authority that others respected. It was as though I had tapped into something deeper, something that didn't require words to be understood. Silence is also a tool for observation. The more you speak, the less you listen, and when you're constantly speaking, miss out on the subtle cues, the pauses in someone's voice, the nervous gestures, the unspoken emotions that others might try to hide. By embracing silence, you become a better observer. You can read the room, understand the dynamics at play, and read the room. Respond with precision, not reaction. This is how you become a strategist in your own life, understanding that sometimes the best response is no response at all. Think about the way influential people, leaders, and even artists approach life. Many of them are not the loudest voices in the room, yet they command the most respect. They don't announce their every move or seek validation for their actions. This is where true power lies, quiet, strategic, and unwavering. When you learn to move in silence, you let your results do the talking. You don't need to convince anyone of your worth or your abilities. You simply show them. This is not to say that silence is the silence answer to every situation, but learning when to embrace it and when to speak is a powerful skill. Like anger or frustration, silence can be a powerful response. It's the moment where you step back, take a deep breath, and decide not to feed into the emotional energy of the moment. It's an act of discipline. When you refrain from speaking in those moments, you demonstrate control over your emotions. You show that you are not ruled by your impulses, but instead you respond with intention. The power of silence can also be felt in the way we handle criticism. Let's face it, criticism is a part of life. No matter who you are or how successful you become, there will always be someone who has something to say about you, your work, or your decisions. But when you learn to remain silent in the face of criticism, you rob it of its power. Instead of reacting defensively or feeling the need to justify yourself, you simply allow the words to pass by you, and by doing this, you maintain your peace. You show that their opinions do not define you, that you are unaffected by their judgments. In my own experience, I've learned that criticism is often more about the person delivering it than it is about you. Most of the time, the people who criticize are projecting their own insecurities or frustrations. They might be jealous, bitter, or simply unaware of the full picture. By responding with silence, you take away their power to affect you. You allow yourself to remain centered, focused on your goals, rather than being swayed by the noise around you. Now, let's talk about how silence ties into emotional detachment. As we discussed earlier, emotional detachment is about choosing not to react impulsively. It's about understanding that you don't need to be controlled by your emotions, and that you can choose how to respond to external events. Silence is a natural extension of this practice. When you detach emotionally from a situation, you stop reacting to it. You simply observe, process, and respond when the time is right. You no longer feel the need to be part of every conversation, every drama, or every conflict. You have the ability to step back, to move through life with calm and clarity, unaffected by the external noise. This doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent to the world around you. Far from it. Emotional detachment and silence actually allow you to care more deeply about the things that truly matter. By freeing yourself from the distractions of unnecessary reactions, you can focus your energy on what aligns with your values, your goals, and your peace. You stop wasting energy on things that don't serve you, and instead you direct that energy toward your own growth and success. Ultimately, the lesson here is simple. Silence is a superpower. It's the quiet strength that many underestimate. By mastering silence and emotional detachment, you not only protect your peace, but you also position yourself as a force to be reckoned with. You become someone who is not easily swayed, someone who moves through life with purpose, confidence, and calm. As we conclude this journey, remember that power lies not in seeking approval or validation, but in being unaffected by rejection and external judgments. The people who make the biggest impact are not the ones desperately trying to be heard, but the ones who know when to stay silent and when to act with precision. Silence is not weakness. It is strength, it is strategy, and when you learn to harness it, you will find that you move through life with an unshakable presence, one that commands respect without saying a word.